Yeah, so last year was all about getting out of the mud, but this year I'm out of the mud with thanks to all of those beautiful people, but now I'm in the fog.
Ah, yeah.
So being in the fog, being in um, being in that depression and just the lack of motivation, lack of action, lack of all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I want to take this year to have a podcast to help me on the journey through that and then share it because how many of us are stuck in the fog, stuck in not being able to take action, not motivated, not earning money, don't actually know how to get from where we are to where we want to be. We want to be over there, but we're here. And we know there's a path, but can't see the path because there's just fog everywhere. So the whole point to this podcast is to find people that I can just kind of go on a journey with each week, week after week, having a different person to talk to with different tools or different ideas and different opinions. Because
Hmm.
what I also realized was it's really easy to have your very narrow opinion, which is here, and this is what you know, and this is the wisdom that you have. But by having lots of conversations with different people, then that your ability to see things differently starts to open up.
Right.
And so it's
Yeah.
either people sharing their perspective or sharing their opinion or giving tools, whatever that might be, whatever it's in your tool house for coaching.
Gotcha. Okay. How are you with spiritual references and
You
that
can
sort
go
of
as
thing?
way far out as you want to.
Okay. And I'm not. I'm very grounded. I'm very grounded. A lot of people are surprised because they see intuitive and they see transformational high performance coach and they're like, what's that? Like, it's just high performance with a spiritual edge and it's
Yeah.
transformation with an edge because I had to reinvent my entire life and heal my past, which, I shared on my podcast. I just launched a new podcast. I took like a 3-year break and then just started a new podcast. And I released my memoir, which is all about my spiritual journey and includes all of the things that I've been through in my life. And there's been a lot from every perspective and how I healed that. Because back when I did it, it's been 30 something years. We didn't have the internet. We didn't, our choices were very limited. And I went to therapy and it did not work. And I went through some really hardcore stuff. So I had to learn, I had to gain tools. And then when the internet came along, it made things much easier. But yeah, yeah.
Now you have free tools at your fingertips.
Yeah. And sometimes I think that can be overwhelming too, because where we're at right now in society, people want instantaneous fixes, they want the magic pill. And I mean, I'm sure it doesn't work like that. You have to process and you have to go through things in order to actually go beyond them. You can't just keep putting band-aids on. Eventually the sticky wears off, you know. And then you're faced with, okay, where am I? What's happening? And where do I go from here?
I agree. And I actually want to put everything that you've just said into the podcast. So we're already underway.
Okay.
Because I think because you're right. It is exactly like that. And the problem for me is that I think it is that instant gratification, is that I want things to be better now. And if I do something for 2 or 3 days and nothing has changed, then my brain jumps in and goes, nothing's changed. It's not working. You may as well stop doing it. You know you're going to fail at it because you're you. So why are you bothering? And that's kind of the thing that I keep tripping over, is that part of
Gotcha.
me that keeps going, you're going to fail. So why do you keep bothering? And then I think that over the years, I've heard this for years and years and years and years, but it's just come to a point now where um, I can hear where I used to be able to hear it and I would try and move past it and it would still trip me up. But now it's at a point where there's just this big fog of let's not even take action. That I struggle to wash the dishes in the morning. I struggle to brush my hair. I struggle to go out Like everything is a struggle. And I was talking to someone yesterday and she said, maybe it's just that time of life, being in your mid 40s and being a parent, and forget I've struggled how to cook. I don't know how to cook anymore. Like that has just disappeared out of my brain. And there's just so much now where every action is a struggle. And what I can't figure out is why. Because I look back in my 20s and my 30s, and in my 20s, I started in my 20s, there was so much drive to do things and to experience things and to just live life. And then in my 30s, there was a drive, but I could start to feel myself falling off. Like I could start to feel that drive disappearing after having an emotionally abusive relationship in my 20s, and then my dad passing away, and then getting married and that being really toxic, and then getting divorced, and then being homeless. So I was homeless for the last couple of years of my 30s, and then getting pregnant, and then having my daughter, and then my mum getting sick and passing away. It's kind of got me at this place where I'm sitting here going, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where to go. Last year I was face first in the mud, and I really felt it. And just the grief and the heartache and the pain and everything, because I was still working through my mum passing away. And this year I'm just really, that fog is, I just don't know. I don't know where to go.
So
I
it's
don't know
called
how to take
survival mode.
action. Yes.
So you're literally, you have your body, your mind, your emotions, your nervous system has adapted into a place that I would term survival mode, right? And it's very much survival mode thinking.
Mm.
So when you're in survival mode, this is about basic needs. This isn't about feel good. This isn't about let's move forward. This is about let's minimize any kind of further hurt, further damage, further abuse, right? So it really is,
Mm.
now we have to reprogram everything and shift it out of survival mode. And that is going to take a lot of conscious work on your part, on a daily basis, to reframe it. And it's
So
normal. Like, just so you know, it's normal after everything you already outlined to end up where you are. And you'd be surprised how many people are in survival mode just from the pandemic.
yeah.
Because everybody got thrown into this place of, wait a minute, everything we know, everything we thought we could rely on has been removed. Now what? So there is sort of a, let's just call it mass consciousness. There's this whole mass consciousness energy of don't do too much, because if you do, you're going to lose it anyways. What you thought you could rely on, you can't rely on it. Why bother?
Yeah.
Right. And so to shift out of that and into a forward movement, it does take some work. So it's not like there's anything, and I don't want to be clear about that. It's not like there's anything wrong with you. You've come this far. And that's where I would start to flip it, is you've been through experiences a lot of people don't have to go through, right? Abusive relationships, the death of their parents. Either they haven't been through it yet, or they don't ever have to go through it. But when you go, and homelessness, like a lot of people are not going to go through stuff like that.
That's
But
only
when you
that
do,
big. That's only that much of what I've been through.
right,
I had my
right?
appendix bursting 9 weeks ago, so I'm still recovering from that, the shock of that experience, and then all the abuse from childhood and my teenage years. Like, I don't know a life without abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. It's like, it's just 48 years of just constant abuse. And you get to a point where you sit there and you just think, so the appendix really was almost just like the icing on the cake of, well, I don't trust people because they abuse me. I don't trust the universal God because, clearly doesn't give a shit about me. I don't trust my family, which are the people that you're meant to trust, but they were actually my abusers. So when you have your family, the ones that are supposed to love you and nurture you and care for you, when they're the ones that abuse you, all of a sudden you get this voice in your head that goes, if they can do that to me, imagine what people who don't have to love me could do to me. So then all of a sudden you don't want to be around people. And then when something physical, when your physical body lets you down, all of a sudden you don't trust your physical body either. So there's nothing to hold on to. And I understand, and I've spoken to enough people to know that there are two different brains. There are the brains of the people who were maybe raised with abuse, but they still had one person that they could go to. There was one
Mm-hmm.
person that they felt safe with, that they could talk to. It might have been a mum or a dad or a school teacher or a grandparent or somebody in their community that they could trust. But then for some of us, there was no one because the teachers were emotional abusers. Then you come home to a non-safe environment, and then you go to school and you weren't safe, and you come home and you weren't safe, and there was no safety. And when you're raised in like no safety net, when shit goes wrong, you fall over and there's nothing to hold you up again. So you just
Yeah.
keep falling until you land, like I did last year, face first in the mud in my own personal hell, which I talked about a lot in last year's podcast. But this year, it's kind of like and like you said, it's been in survival mode. And you said it's going to take a lot of conscious action. But how do you take action? This is where I sit right now. How do I take action when there's no part of me that actually wants to take action?
Mm. Okay. So first up, and let me just preface this because you and I don't know each other, right? This is the first time we're meeting. In telling you, there's so much about your what you shared that I completely understand because I went there, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
lived there. My mother was a narcissist. She was and had bipolar and every other mental, what she calls handicap.
Mm-hmm.
So between that and all of the people in my life that came along and took advantage of my good nature,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then my daughter was molested when she was 3 years old from her
Mm-hmm.
father. I was already going through a divorce, so I had to get through that. And then the judicial system re-traumatized us. And it went on and on and on. But when she was molested, that was my turning point. It was also the biggest sort of, let's just say, shit show
Mm-hmm.
that you can imagine, because I reached a point where there was one day where I was like, I'm not doing this. I can't do this. Right. Between her and her trauma, and I had to hold everything in. And the psychologists and everyone were telling me, you've got to hold it together. Don't let her see you cry, yada, yada, yada. Well, it came back to bite us a couple of years later when she was 5 and in school, and she would run off the bus. And I'm trying to juggle a career and a single mother. I've got no child support. I have been alienated from my entire support system and my family. And then my mother's trying to take custody of my kid. I'm like, all right, God, why is this happening? Like, how could you already let me down? Right. So I understand that aspect too, where you're just like, I give up. I give up on even trying anything.
Yeah.
And I hit a point, there was one night where it was so hard. And I'm like, I'm just going to take myself out and take her with me, because if I don't take her with me, th her dad's going to get her.
Yeah, I
And what
felt that
life is,
during the pandemic too. My
yeah,
it's
what,
like, this is horrible. How do I get out of this? And I said, I'm gonna have to take her out and then I'm gonna have to do me. And
yeah.
I went through exactly the same process. Yeah.
And when that, I spent 24 hours in that. Now I'm 57. I was in my late 20s when I was going through all of that. And the next day I woke up and was like, no, you can't go down like this. Like, you have no choice. You've got to find a way to turn this around for yourself. And I had studied most of my life anyways. I didn't believe what the church was telling, so I went to Catholic school, Catholic church, didn't like it. Then my mom became a born again Christian, didn't like the fundamental Christian stuff. And my ex-husband was a fundamental Christian person, and the church kept telling me, stay with him. He's the head of the house. I'm like, you don't understand what's happening here. So even that organization was very against living a peaceful life. And added to that belief that, like, God doesn't care, or I was just born with something wrong with me. I also had the belief for a long time, if my mom can't love me, because when I had my daughter, I'm like, how can you not love your child? Like, how can you not? But if she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't love me, who else can? Right. So just give, give, give. People, please do whatever you got to do to hold the peace, which is what my life had equated to.
Mm-hmm.
um, until that everything fell apart. And then I did start to turn it around because of the study that I did. And I tried to go to counseling. It was not working. I did a lot of self study, but because I am an intuitive and I do have communication with, guides, angels, whatever you want to call them. They began to teach me all kinds of things because I was desperate and open at that point about you can take control of your life, but we're going to have to redo your entire belief system. And I literally had to go through, what are all my fears? What are the beliefs that have been put into me from all of these events? What came out of all of that? And moving forward, what am I so afraid of? And what am I defending against? Because I was defending myself at work. I was defending myself in every relationship I had. I didn't have a lot of friends and I did isolate. Like I became a workaholic and a single mom, just pay the bills and go to work. That's what I knew. And it was miserable. It was very, very difficult. So I did go through all of the beliefs. And then I also went through all of my triggers, like what triggers me the most that makes me immediately want to shut down. So I'm going to ask you, because the first thing I had to do, and I'll tell you the first step is you have to have a vision for what you want, even though it seems like why hope for anything? Because everything just gets screwed up anyways.
Yeah.
Right? Why have a vision? Why even want anything? It's just going to get screwed up.
Yeah.
But without something to move towards, without something to grab onto, you will just stay stuck. That's the part that will anchor you in.
But it's still kind of hard to have that vision, and like other people call it a why. It's hard to have that why. It's hard to have that reason or that goal or whatever you want to call it at the end. It's hard to have that thing when the perception, it's not true, but the perception is that every action I take is going to fail anyway. So why bother having something? So how do I get past that part that keeps going, yeah, but why bother? Why bother? Why bother? Why bother? And it's like, and so back in my 30s, I was actually doing really, really well in my 30s. Like you, I was really connected and I was getting all of these amazing tools to help me through all of what I was going through, because my 30s was all about find every single belief that you have, go and meet every single personality that you have, go and meet every single part that you have, go and learn about every single trigger that you have. And that was my 30s. And I did that for years. And I sat in meditation for 6 or 7 hours a day in my 30s and went and found all of this. Everything fell apart for me so I found out that my mom was going to die when my daughter was 4 months old. And I'd already planned to be a single parent because her dad was a donor. And so I hadn't planned to be a single parent without my mom. And then the next 3 years, so mum was meant to pass away before my daughter's first birthday. She wasn't meant to make it to the end of the year, but she went 3 years. And so she passed away when my daughter was 3, just turned 3. But it was 3 years of watching my mum and waiting for her to die. And that's when my belief in the universe just kind of went, no. If you really cared, if there was a God or a universe or a divine and you really cared, you would not take my mum right now. It was the only grandchild she had. She'd been waiting for 38 years for a grandchild because I didn't have my daughter until I was 39. So she was waiting for all of that time for a grandchild. She finally got one. And then 4 months in, she gets told that she's going to die. So it's kind of hard to just hold on to anything that isn't tangible, that I can't see. Because
so you have to start small, and you already have all of the information you need, right? Yeah. I'm not telling you to go do what you did in your 30s, because that's a little bit on the overkill. And the more you focus on all of that stuff, the more you're just going to swim in it. And I get that.
Yeah, there are times when you have to do it. I don't have right? 6 like to 8 hours a day.
Yeah, there are times when we are very stuck in trauma, we've never examined it, that yeah, you got to go through it. You have to sit through it. There's no other way through it if you don't process. But you've done it. So that's the beautiful part. You're already 10 steps ahead of a lot of people. However, you've already got all the information that you need. And here's where you start. You just rattled off a whole lot of what you don't trust, of the negative beliefs, and what you don't want. Right? You're very clear on that. Okay, so we take all of that and we go, all right, so if there was just, it was minimized a little bit. If the pressure of all of those fears was minimized just a little bit, what would that look like?
If I go based on feeling, there's relief. Like there is relief in minimizing the fears and minimizing the trauma, and just kind of like I could feel it was all like a huge balloon. And I thought, what if we just made the balloon just a little bit smaller?
Yeah.
Just a little bit smaller. It doesn't have to be that big. It doesn't have to be the only thing that is
And
in
it
front of
doesn't
my
have to be
face.
all the way gone. Like we can
Yeah.
just do this and go, okay, well, even if it was just a little bit smaller,
Mm.
what does that look like for me? What's the possibility? What does that give you? If all of that, all of these past experiences, especially the most recent ones and everything you went through last year, if all of the energy and emotions and thoughts and fears that came out of was just a little bit smaller, what would change for you?
There would be space. So I'm looking at it now and I go, well, if I make the balloon filled with all of that just a little bit smaller, then I can see past it. There's a horizon that wasn't there before.
Perfect. All right. And what would be on that horizon if you had to guess?
Um, I'm getting sunshine. So remember how I said I was in the fog? I'm surrounded by fog. In the horizon, there's sunshine, which is what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for the sunshine. And I guess maybe that's what I'm holding. Maybe that's what I can hold on to is the perception of sunshine inside of me. So instead of me
Which
trying to hold on to something like a house or money or a
exactly.
car or a relationship or something tangible like that, it's like, no, I don't really care about any of that stuff. I don't really need any of that stuff. What I need is some sunshine in my life.
So what does sunshine equate to for you? Is that clarity? Is it, what is it?
It's that feeling of, I would equate it to that feeling that people get when they're walking up a really, 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 really hard mountain. They get to the top and they see the view and they just go, oh, that is so good. That was so worth it. It's that, it's that moment.
Okay. Expand on that because when I think about that, I think about, yeah, after all of the effort,
Sorry, that was my that
you're
was my
good.
singing bowl. I just whacked it with the cup.
After all of that effort to be able to see the view, like you have the ability, your perception, your view, there's nothing obstructing that, right? You can see farther. You can see things you couldn't see while you were climbing. That to me is what that means. But what does it mean to you?
Same kind of thing. Being able to see things that I haven't been able to see before. So being able to see clearer and having more clarity and being able to see the next step or being able to see the being able to see beyond where I am. It's
Hmm.
been really hard to see beyond where I am right now.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Are you in where you are right now really seeing what's going on in the moment, or are you still very trapped in seeing what you've already been through?
Both. So I'm very much in the moment, in the feelings that I'm having right now, and aware that sometimes the feelings that I'm having right now are from experiences from the past. Um, so I kind of do both. But my past is really more like in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm not stuck in my childhood trauma. I'm not stuck
Right.
in things that happened in my 20s or 30s because I spent my 30s dropping all of that and dealing with all of
Right.
that and facing all of that and forgiving all of that. So for me, a lot of my mind trauma is about what's happened in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And then I kind of get anchored in that. So I guess I'm still in the past, but it's the past couple of weeks,
It's more
not the
immediate.
past 30 years. Yeah, it's a lot more immediate, but it's still
Okay.
the past.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So do this for me for a sec. All right. Just take a deep breath and just see if you can erase all of what's happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Just it's not there anymore. Just for the moment. It's
Mm-hmm.
not there anymore. And if that weight isn't there, those feelings aren't there, the thoughts, the beliefs, the mind chatter that tells you you're not good enough, that's never going to change, all of the if that's not there, what would you do with that? What can you do with that right now?
If I didn't have any of that there, I would probably have a lot of time on my hands.
What would you do at the
uh,
time?
something else. Um, what would I do with the time if I wasn't thinking about all of that stuff? I would probably spend more time with my daughter because I would want to spend more time with her because I wouldn't be so bogged down with just the trauma of the last 3 or 4 weeks. Um, and every 3 to 4 weeks, always seems like there's always something in the last 3 to 4 weeks that I have to deal with that I then and then I deal with it, but then it just like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just like every 2, 3, 4 weeks, it just moves like this.
Right.
um, I don't know what I do. I guess that's kind of the fog.
All right. Let me take you through a little exercise and let's just see what we can do to quiet the mind
Mm-hmm.
and get you back into your heart. Because a lot of times when you're in survival mode and you've been through the things that you've been through, as much as we want to be in the feeling place, the feeling's still tied to the thought place, which is tied to the stuff that we're trying to avoid,
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah.
And right now there's a cycle. It feels like there's a cycle that's just tied to I just want to avoid any other problem,
Any other
right?
problem, any other thought, any other experience, any other feeling. Like I just want to avoid it all because it all eventually ends up with me doing something wrong, getting into trouble, getting punished, ending up hurting. Like that's just, I guess that's the cycle. It's not necessarily true, but
Right.
that's the cycle.
Right. And that but the cycle's winning. So
Yes,
that
yes, it
thought
is.
process is winning, right? Like because now you've got your neural pathways are just finely traveled and that's what's recycling right now. And that's normal when you've been through what you've been through. So, I'm going to have you do a couple things. You can close your eyes, you can leave them open, totally up to
Mm-hmm.
you. I like to close my eyes just because I think it makes the process a little more in depth. And the point here is we're going to work on some sensory things and see what happens. Just to see what happens. I'm not going to promise anything, but let's just see what happens. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
So the first thing I want you to do is take your forefinger and your thumb. And I want you one of them. And I usually use my non-dominant hand. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm right-handed, I use my left hand. And just gently rub your forefinger against your thumb so gently that you can feel every ridge in your fingertip. See if you can get it so light that and so sensitive you can feel the ridges. And then nod when you have that.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it going for a sec. And just notice how that feels on both the receiving finger and the one that's really feeling for it. Are your feet flat on the floor?
No,
And do you have shoes on?
no,
Okay. Do you have shoes on? Or
no.
are you barefooted? Okay, perfect. Can you get your feet on the floor?
Okay, I'm actually sitting on the floor, so
Okay, that's fine.
but I can put
Just
my knees
just
up.
yeah. Okay. So you can stop with your finger and I want you to focus on every one of your toes and what it feels like under your feet and your toes. I want you to feel like every individual toe, What's the sensation? What's the temperature? You might have to wiggle your toes to really get the feel for what's going on in each one of your toes. Is there any pain? Is there any pressure? Is it comfortable? Does it feel supported? And then nod your head when you get that.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. All right, you can let the toes go. Now we're going to do your breathing. We're going to focus, but we're not breathing as in let me control my breath. I want you to pay attention and put all of your focus on the temperature of the air coming into your nostrils and then out of your nostrils. What does that temperature change feel like? Does the air feel like it's coming in one way and going out another? Or can you become really hyper aware of it? Nod your head when you have that. Okay, perfect. You can let that go. And now we're going to let's use our non-dominant hand, and we're going to do the same thing that we did with the one finger over the other, but we're going to do it with the entire palm of the hand, like running down each finger, finger to finger, all the way to the center of the palm, and try to feel for every line, every crease in our hand. So one finger is going to go real lightly and try to feel for every fingerprint, every crease, every line. It's nice and easy and gentle. And take note, put all your focus there on the hand that's feeling what it's feeling, and then the hand that's being felt. What does that feel like? What's the sensation? When you have all of that, then just nod your head. Okay, perfect. All right, you can open your eyes and stop. What did you notice your mind did while you were doing those exercises? Was there a lot of thought?
Not a lot. I think the only thing I was thinking was, oh, at least I know how now know why I'm doing focusing wrong. That was the only thought that I had.
Okay, but there weren't any other thoughts other than that?
No.
Your mind got quiet?
Yeah.
So that tool is something I learned from one of my mentors. His name is Shirzad. It's called, we call them PQ tools. They're positive intelligence tools to stop the mind. We get fully into the sensory, and those exercises you can repeat multiple times. You don't have to do all of them, but they don't take long. And the interesting thing is, no matter how many times you do it, if you're really focused on, let me really get back into the sensation and really feel, and you can switch hands however you want to do that, your mind shuts off. So all of the negative loop, all of the negative self-talk, all of the projection into the future, or even what you're feeling right now, it stops. It's an automatic stopgap. Mm-hmm. And now that you have it stopped, let me ask you again. In this moment, looking forward, with all of those past things and all of those fears and worries and thoughts, and minimize, like, can we minimize it? Can you feel it minimized enough to see the horizon, to see that sunshine, or to even sense that it's there for you?
Not yet, but I can. The fog has lifted a little bit. So when I got onto the call with you, it was really dense. It was really dense, but I can feel that it's kind of softened. Mm-hmm. And I guess my question is, you can't, it's not easy to stay in that state. So how often could someone do these techniques? I guess you could even stop every half an hour to just take 5 minutes.
You could set alarms on your phone to
And
remind you to
yeah.
stop. You know, it doesn't even have to take 5 minutes. You can do a couple minutes. It's a matter of just stopping the automated thoughts that are running,
Mm,
stopping all of it, getting back into the feeling state.
mm,
Because when we're really focused on sensory and like 100% focused on the sensory feeling of something, you're both kinesthetic because of the touch, but also you're really focused on what does that feel like inside. Your brain's busy. It cannot do two things like jump back to, wait a minute, we're afraid of the we're afraid of something right now. It will not go there. It's actually going to slow itself down because it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be focused on breathing, like the temperature change.
mm,
What's going on with my toes? Can I feel them? So when you give your brain that multiple times throughout the day, you're retraining the automated focus where your brain's been. You use it as much as you want. And it's amazing how quickly it starts to shift. And the more control you have on stopping those thoughts, once you do the like a PQ rep like that, then you start to put in a belief or a series of thoughts and beliefs, consciously inserting the opposite of what you've been telling yourself or your monkey mind's been telling you. Right.
mm,
So it's
mm,
never going to change. Why even bother? What would the opposite of that be? Maybe not the full other end of the spectrum, because sometimes we can't get the full pendulum swing, and that's okay. What would halfway be? See what I'm saying? So, what would
mm,
halfway be? Everything I do just, you know, falls apart. What would the halfway new belief on the other end of the spectrum be? Just halfway.
mm. Got it.
Right. So, what would that
Yeah.
be for you? And here's what I would ask you, because you are a parent, and just sitting in here having this and being in your energy and listening to you, you come across as someone, and tell me if I'm wrong, who's very compassionate, very empathetic, and very loving.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a mother, you have those qualities, right?
Yeah.
Has that been ruined by all the things you've been through?
No, it's probably been enhanced because I've been on the receiving end of the opposite. So I'm now on the other side of raising a daughter based on compassion and kindness because I know what it's like not to
That
have
isn't
it.
something that got ruined. That's something you've been doing for how many years?
Oh, I did. I lived based on compassion and kindness before I had her. So long
Oh,
time.
I know.
Yeah.
But as far as being a mother,
Yeah.
how many years have you been a mother now?
9.
Okay. So for 9 years, no matter what's happened, no matter what you've been through,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what challenges come along, you stayed with successfully, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
loving, compassion, empathetic, nurturing as a mom, correct?
Yes. Yes. My daughter sits over here in her own little bubble that is completely different to my bubble.
Right.
Yeah.
As of right now, it sits completely separate. But what I
Mm-hmm.
want you to see is it really doesn't, because it's still who you're showing up as being, no matter what's going on over here, you're still maintaining that. And it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
It didn't get ruined. So when your brain feeds, everything always gets ruined. Not everything. Because see that
Yeah.
everything and always, and that's very much survival brain thinking,
Mm-hmm.
right? It
Mm-hmm.
it just goes to that sort of finality of the extreme. Not everything. That's one thing. And I'm sure there's more, but that is one thing that did not get ruined. It got enhanced. It got better. Your
Yeah.
words, not mine.
And it is one thing that I remind myself often when I have that voice in my head going, you're going to fail. You fail at everything. I look at that and go, no, I'm not failing at parenting. I'm an excellent parent and I have an amazing child. I am not failing at parenting my kid. So that is kind of my defense against that voice that keeps telling me that I'm failing. And I get it. There is, and I'm so thankful we're having this conversation because it really has, it shifted me out of that I'm always, it's never going to change. Nothing's ever going to change. And that's the dense fog of that voice that I was so anchored in and have been so anchored in for a couple of months of nothing's ever going to go right. Nothing's ever going to change. And just having this conversation with you and then doing that technique. And I've done the technique before, but not, I didn't go into that depth. So it wasn't sitting there and you can rub your fingers together and I do that and I feel, but not to the point, like that minuscule point of feeling the ridges and not to the point of focusing on the toes and feeling the temperature of the toes and feeling the changes in the toes. Like it's just that difference of taking it in and almost putting a magnifying glass on it just a little bit to go a little bit deeper. I hadn't done that. And doing that, I could feel just my nervous system kind of let go a little bit and go, oh, I don't
Yeah,
have
because
to.
the survival brain was no longer in control. That's what
Yeah.
that shift is your survival brain, the monkey mind is no longer in control,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Much more the true you then gets to be in the driver's seat. The more we repeat stuff like this, and I mean, it's one tool, right? In a myriad of tools I could pull out right now, and I don't know
Mm.
you that I don't know you. So it's just one tool that I can pull out and go, okay, how do we get her from her brain unlocked from survival mode and being very protected to the point of, yes, your nervous system's in overdrive and your brain is always looking for a problem. And that's normal,
Mm.
right? Get it shifted out to there is no problem. What am I doing right now? Oh, that's right. I'm just, what do my fingerprints feel like? Can I feel my fingerprints? You actually can if you're really focused and very slow and very, and you have to adjust the pressure as you're moving your finger, right? Same with the temperature change. If you breathe too fast, you can't feel it. If you breathe through too slow, it's a little too like your brain's more focused on the breath than it is the temperature. So
Mm.
your brain really has to focus in on what it's doing to accomplish the task,
Mm-hmm.
which then takes that survival brain and shuts it down for that time that you're doing it and allows your nervous system to take a breath and go, huh, yeah, that's better. All right. And now following that, we can start to redirect the brain and go, okay, not everything is screwed up. It's not that it never is okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's okay. I want those things to lengthen, the periods of time when things are going right to lengthen because it seems like the negative stuff keeps happening, the unexpected, the trauma, the worries, that all keeps happening. How can I lengthen it? And when we start to come from that place of, yeah, my parenting never got damaged through all of that. How is that possible?
Yeah.
Why do you think your parenting never changed, only got enhanced?
Because it's an absolute for me. It's not a compromise for me.
Interesting.
And it was an absolute back in my 20s. I made decisions in my 20s about the kind of parent I was going to be and the actions that I was going to take as a parent, and made decisions in my 20s that were still here in my 40s and my 30s when I had my daughter. And it's, yeah, there's no compromise. So if I get pushback, which I have gotten because I homeschool and do all sorts of other things, um, if I get pushback, it doesn't trigger anything. I just look at them and go, what? And
Because
you
you
don't
are
approve?
willing, you've already committed to fiercely defending that.
Well, it's interesting. There is no defense for me because it's not even,
Yeah.
there's no question inside of me. It's such an absolute. And I have had other parents say to me, how do you deal with people that question you? I go, they don't. They go, what do you mean they don't question? I said, no one questions me because there's no question inside of me whether I'm doing right or wrong. It's an absolute. So when you have an absolute, there is no question. You only get questioned if you are questioning yourself. And I don't question my choices when it comes to my daughter. It's an absolute.
That's very interesting. Everything you just said is very interesting. And I think you just answered your own quandary.
Okay. Tell me.
If you were to listen to what you just said, and I
Mm.
suggest you do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And create absolutes with what you're going to let affect you from the outside world, let affect you and
Mm.
not question
Mm.
and not put up with, what then changes?
Yeah. So have absolute beliefs as opposed to beliefs that may or may not change depending on who's standing in front of me at the time.
I mean, you have these very strong beliefs that you don't have to be questioned. Your daughter doesn't have to come out of the bubble, right? To
Yeah.
have a belief set like that for you and your life and what you're going to experience for the rest of your life, to create an absolute
Mm.
where there is no more questioning, there's no more self-doubt, there's no more negative beliefs, and it is now set in stone. What would change? If you put yourself in the same bubble that you've put your daughter in, what would change?
I hadn't even thought about that. My brain is having a conniption at the moment.
I know it is. Your ego's like, no, no, that's okay. That's perfect.
I'm watching it having this little mini meltdown on the inside of my head, going, no, don't understand this moment. And there's this other part of me that's going, I really want to understand this moment because I know there's such a big thing in this. Um,
What if you just move yourself into the
mm,
bubble?
I can hear what you're saying. If I had absolutes around who I was and it wasn't a question, and nothing outside of me defined that about myself, then this whole part of me that constantly changes depending on the external circumstance, depending on whoever's standing outside of me, it will not constantly be doing this, which is part of, I guess, my nervous system being fried because there's no anchor for it. It's just constantly, like, it's just constantly moving. It's either going up and down or round and round because there's no absolute. There's
Yeah.
no constant inside of me that I can anchor to and hold on to.
Yeah. So what if you put yourself in the same boat that you've put your daughter in all of
Yeah.
these years and you were an amazing parent? Well, amazingly parent yourself.
Yeah.
What happens?
A lot. If I look at it, I think a lot would change. I would
Yeah.
stop questioning so much of what I'm doing. And not only the questioning, I think the indecisiveness would change. I've been trying to buy a new phone for about a month, but I can't decide on what to buy because if I buy that one and I make a wrong decision or it breaks and I have to send it back, or I buy that one and something goes wrong, or I buy this one and something goes wrong. And I've been trying to um, work out where I'm going to put the chicken coop and the dog fencing because we're on a new property. But it's all that. But if I do that and I do it wrong, then what are people going to think if I put it in the wrong place and someone comes over and then they give me their opinion because I made the wrong decision? All of a sudden, all of that questioning just stops.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple things I want to share with you to help even anchor in this thought because this is now you have this thing you can do
Mm,
for yourself through journaling and being super conscious about, all right, what does that bubble look like when I put myself in it?
mm-hmm.
And you have separated like this is life and chaos and this is my daughter. Okay, well, let's do it now and put you in the bubble. Let's just remove all, put you in the bubble. What are your absolutes? What are you not going to put up with? What are you now only going to allow into your life? Put that in the bubble. And the reason
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you this is very similar journey that I had when I went through, I can't do this anymore. Like that morning I woke up and was like, I can't take her out. I can't take myself out. Like, that's not who I am. I can't let this take me down. So little by little, I built it, and I didn't have anyone from the outside going, you can do this thing where, you take control. When I realized that, wow, I have the power to choose that,
Mm-hmm.
the way that I choose it for my daughter, I can choose it for me. That was the minute my connection back to spirit opened up. And I was no longer angry at God, because I realized, wow, you gave me the power to do that. You're not supposed to do that for me. I have free will. So, of course, you can't interfere there. But I didn't realize I had that power. And when you go through abuse and you go through trauma and you go through all of these things and you're just trying to stay alive and make it through every single day without collapsing or
Mm-hmm.
something else falling apart, you forget, or we just were never taught. We have absolute power to do that for ourselves. We always think to do it for our loved ones, especially our girls, right? Our kids. Like, absolutely not gonna bend. I will do everything I have to do. I'll go between her and a bullet.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not. I don't do that for me, until you finally realize, wow, why don't I do that for me? Can I do that for me? Well, what if I did do that for me? What does that look like? What are now the parameters, the fences I create between myself and the nonsense, right? And suddenly things start to shift enough where you get more clarity, and you realize the universe wasn't against you, but the universe couldn't interfere with the thoughts and the beliefs and the things that you were defending against. Even if you weren't consciously choosing them, it's just, and I'm sure you know this, whatever we're focused on, that's what's going to continue to generate in our lives. So if we're focused on the fears constantly, as much as we don't want something to happen, it's like that energy's out there now, right? Oh, the kid's safe from all of it because I'm going to make sure the kid's safe from all of it. But the fact that I'm not safe from it, and I believe that it can keep interfering with me. And I'm not saying that magically nothing bad's ever going to happen, but you won't let that bad thing that happened now define you, change you, and floor you, and put you in the corner of the cage where you're afraid to come out.
Yeah.
You start to face it more and more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Absolutely it does. And that's exactly what I guess I'm doing is constantly putting myself in the position where a bullet comes my way and I stand in front of it. Instead of looking at it going, yeah, that's not hitting me, I'm going to move. I'm not moving, I'm actively moving. Well, I am moving, but I'm actively moving to stand in front of it, as opposed to moving so it goes around me.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just
Oh,
keep
and
getting hit.
sometimes it's just because we believe that bullet's for me. So
Yes,
it's just shifting
yes.
out of that place of going, that bullet's not for me.
Yeah,
Bullet's flying my way, but I'm not going to be its target. I'm out of the way.
yeah, yeah. I never really looked at it like that because, yeah, when people say things, it's not even necessarily aimed at you. It's usually aimed at themselves, and they're just spewing it out of their
Projecting.
mouth. But if you're someone that was raised to take it on to mean it means something about you, then you'll stand in front of it and let it smash you in the face, and then change
Yeah.
who you are based on what that person said in that moment. But then
And
when
then take
another,
10 more bullets.
yes. And I remember I used to say to people, this is when I was in my 20s before I even started doing this work. I used to say to people, I cannot bend myself into a big enough pretzel to please everybody on this earth, but I'm trying as hard as I can.
Yeah. Why
And I
would
look
you?
back and I think that's insane. Why would I keep trying to bend myself into a big enough pretzel to please people when I know I can't? But I'm trying. It's like, well, how about I just stop trying? Why don't I straighten myself out and let everybody's shit just fly past me instead of trying to take it on board?
Have you ever heard this story of the stallion back in Asia? It's about the good, bad, who knows. Have you ever heard that story?
No.
Let me share it with you, and hopefully it will help you with this shifting that you're about ready to do. And it feels to me, could be wrong, but it feels to me like you're ready to do it. Like you're ready to just shift out. So just imagine like back when in Asia, when there was emperors and there was, villagers, and in this far off village, there was this old man, and he was very much a sage. He was very much, a wise man. He didn't have a lot. He lived with his son though. His son was more materialistic, but they lived in this village, and in the village, everybody was typical gossipy. We'll come congratulate you and cheer you on when things go great. And when things fall apart, we're going to come criticize you, right? And ask you why you did that. So this old man saved a lot of his resources and his money to buy this one stallion, this grand stallion. And he was able to do it. And his son and him built a pen and put the stallion in the pen. And his son's like, all right, we have it. Now we're going to have something. Now we can build our riches, whatever. And along come all the villagers when they see the stallion in the pen that they built. Oh, that's a beautiful stallion. How lucky you are, how blessed you are. Things are going to be so good for you. What do you think, old man? And the old man was very quiet. And he just said, good, bad, who knows? And his son's like, Dad, take it. Like we are lucky. We are blessed. Look at how we've been able to do this. And he just looked at his son and he said the same words again. Good, bad, who knows? Or, who am I to judge whether we're blessed or we're not? Like it is what it is, basically. And so the next day, after the villagers went home, the old man and the son go out to see this brilliant stallion, right? And they realize the stallion had broken out of the pen they built and it's gone. And here come all the villagers. You wasted all of your money. Right? You had all of this, and now you're penniless and you have no stallion. How unfortunate. You must be cursed. What do you think, old man? And the old man, same answer. Who am I to judge? Good, bad, who knows? Him and his son, he went in the house and his son's like, Dad, what should we do? He said, just leave it. Just leave it. Well, this stallion was quite the energy with the ladies, the wild horses out on the range. And the next morning they wake up. Not only did the stallion return, he brought 100 wild mares, top notch, with him into the pen that they built. So now he doesn't just have one, he's got an entire herd. They hurry up and close the pen. And here come all the villagers. Oh, we thought you'd lost it. You made a bad decision, but now look how lucky you are that you have the stallion that's so magnetic to the other horses. Now you're the richest man in the village. How blessed you are, how powerful you are. What do you think, old man? And his answer remained the same. Very mellow. His son's getting all egotistical about it. Yeah, we're great.
Mhm.
The old man, same thing. Who am I to judge? Good, bad, who knows? So his son went out and was breaking one of the mares and broke his leg. And of course, the same scene played out. Villagers came, how horrible. You thought it was all great, and they're criticizing him. Man keeps responding the same way. Well, a week later, there was a war that broke out in another province. And here comes the emperor's men. We need to recruit all of the able-bodied men to fight in this war and defend our province. And they couldn't take his son because his son had broken his leg, right? And many of them lost their sons to the war, their husbands to the war. And they came and said, you're so lucky he broke his leg, right? After telling him he was cursed, he's all these things. And the old man just answered the same way, good, bad, who knows? And that story can actually go on and on if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Think about it. Like another blessing, another curse. And if your response is always like the old man who was such a sage, Who am I to judge? Good, bad, who knows? Regardless of what everybody's telling me, I'm not letting my ego get big, but I'm also not afraid of loss. I'm just in that place of it is what it is right now. Good, bad, who knows? How much more power do we have to let things just run their course? And if I believe that in the end, everything's working for my highest good, whether it's a lesson that's enhancing who I am or it's making me understand and go through something that I'm stronger over. Who knows? Whatever that is that comes out of that thing. But in the end, it's always working out for me. Now I don't have to be in fear of whatever mishap because I know whatever it is always going to turn out for my benefit in the long run. Maybe I don't like the circumstances. I'm sure the old man didn't like the circumstances of the horse running off and he's sitting with an empty pen, but it didn't disturb his peace. His son, on the other hand, had all kinds of things to say about it and, paced around. We can live in that or we can live in the other. And that's what creating this bubble for yourself, you can create an absolute belief and hold on to that too. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. It's all working out in the end. And it doesn't get to change who I am. So if you lived with that sort of an absolute, what would happen?
A lot. I wouldn't be so all over the place because of the perceptions and beliefs of things being good and bad. The only place where I struggle with that concept is in moments of death or illness or sickness. Okay, my mom passed away. She was young, but still, the death of a mother is pretty normal eventually. But the death of a child, like it's harder to sit in that. Well, who knows if that's good or bad concept when if you're a parent going through a kid being sick or like some kind of terminal illness or something really, really bad, like a heart defect or kidney having to go through a kidney failure or anything like that, like the really bad things that happen with kids, it's hard to sit in that same perspective and hold that same truth. And I always wonder when I hear stories like that, sometimes I sit back and I go, did the person who came up with that story even have children? Do they even know what it's like?
Let me share something with you. It's so interesting that we're having this conversation, especially right now. So in my life, and in my book, I share it. I've been through leukemia. I had colon cancer in 2015, right?
Mm-hmm.
Single mom, breadwinner. My dad also lives with me. He's 82 years old, and has for the last 20 years. And I didn't go traditional Western medicine to treat any of it. I also homeschooled my kids and I was an entrepreneur, right? Like I did everything off book, like nothing normal about what I chose. But I do know because I have a very strong background in natural medicine, but I always just knew if I go chemo, radiation, bone marrow transplant, all the stuff that they are talking about doing when I had leukemia the first time, I'm dead in 6 months. There's just no way, right? So I've always taken on those big health issues on my own. Now, it's not that I don't go to doctors. I went to India to have neck surgery, to have 3 discs replaced in my neck that blew out all at the same time. And if I hadn't done it, I'd be paralyzed. So to me, doctors are necessary at times, right? Currently, for the last few months, I've been working on and just started some new treatments. Currently, I'm dealing with intestinal cancer and I have a big mass. Yay big. I just moved all of my equipment into the other part of my room before we did this podcast because I've been working on myself all day, using Rife treatments and biofeedback. And most people that look at me would never know that I'm going through that right now. Right? So how do you deal with it? There are moments when I think this is insane. People tell me I'm insane for taking it on, but I've already kicked it multiple times in the past, right? This isn't my first rodeo.
Yeah.
And I've done my research, and I know the number of people who have beat cancer, overcome kidney disease, different things, using the same equipment and protocols that I'm using. And when it gets bad and I feel like crap, and I do, like I have, and this may surprise you, but I actually have a lot of brain fog right now because I've been in detox mode now for the last 2 weeks, right? Like focusing and doing coaching with people, super easy because it comes naturally to me and my intuition takes over.
Yes.
Focusing on tasks for my business, like marketing, like I can't for the life of me force myself to sit down and do it because my mind, it just will not focus.
Yeah.
But I actually have a ton of brain fog right now that I'm dealing with. And it's part of the process. And when I'm going through it, I have to keep telling myself, chemo and radiation would be 10 times worse, 1,000 times worse. You wouldn't be able to move. You wouldn't be able to eat even less than what I'm eating on my very limited whole food diet right now. I'm very limited on what I can consume because it is a big part of my large intestines and part of my small intestines. And so I have to come up with things like that comes out of my journaling when I make the decision. And I did buy insurance back in December. I canceled it in January. A, nobody would call me back primary wise. And B, everything that I was looking at diagnostically, the cost of it, and then the treatments, I'm like, I'm going to take my chances. I know I can beat this. And the thing's already shrinking. Like it's already working, right? But it doesn't matter whether it's me working on me helping my kids, me helping my dad, who also has leukemia, and we've kept his numbers the same for the last 10 years. He's in stage 3 renal failure, supposedly, based on his numbers. He's asymptomatic, not supposed to be able to fix those numbers. Oh, we fixed those numbers. And now that I have the new equipment, we will actually start to heal him now and get him so he's not in any kind of renal failure. And it's not that I'm superhuman or super special that allows me to get through those kinds of scary things. It's that I have absolutes. And it took me a long time, but I created them. And when stuff happens, I can look at the circumstances and go, yeah, no, our bodies were made to heal themselves. We just have to create a healing environment within our bodies and remove the things that cause the problem. And yeah, and my kids have been through things too. So I always have that, the body's capable of healing, right?
Mm. And how do you keep faith in God or the divine?
I don't see God as like Santa Claus in the sky. That took me a long time to shift out of too, because I used to, go into Christian church and what like you picture God as this human being. And I've had enough experiences to understand that God is an energy and it's the energy of creation,
Mm.
right? But there's a love to it that's so incomprehensible. It's when I try to make God be like a father figure or Santa Claus or the great magician in the sky that's either for me or against me,
Mm-hmm.
right? That I get into trouble.
Yeah.
So it took a while to get to the understanding of what God really is. There's no judgment there. It's just pure creation, pure love, unconditional love, right? That doesn't mess with us. That really, and in human terms, it's still hard for me because I have had so many experiences, whether you want to call them paranormal, supernatural, whatever, meditations, where I know what I know,
Mm-hmm.
right? That I just can't even question it anymore.
Yeah.
And I look back now on all of the things that I have come through and overcome and the relationships. And it's interesting because I see all of those things as they were stepping stones, lessons, and whatnot for me to get to where I am now and where I've been for the past 25 years, to help other people that are
Mm-hmm.
caught up in it.
Mm-hmm.
If I hadn't gone through those things, I don't think I would be as effective as compassionate, as loving, or as vicious like a dog when I'm working with people to go after the things that are keeping them from what the life that they actually could have, a life of peace and freedom internally.
And I'm so thankful, being one human being on this earth, that you are showing up and you are sharing and you are helping. And I'm so thankful for this conversation that we've had.
Yeah, well, think about it for yourself though. I mean, honestly, with all, and I mean, we went through a lot today, especially considering I don't know you. Right? Like we've never met before. So,
but that's what I love about this. You get to be, you just, I don't know, you get to connect with
how
different people.
perfect is that the universe did out of all of the posts I see?
Yeah.
I think I responded to your post. Out of all of the ones that I see, I maybe respond to two every couple of months, but yours caught my attention and wouldn't let go. And I was like, all right, go check this out and just see what this is all about. It sounds interesting. And then you had to change the appointment, right? We shifted it by 1 week. And I could have gone, well, that's not meant to be. And I went, no, that's perfect because I was actually last weekend was so sick from my treatments. I was trying to figure out how am I going to pull it together enough to do this conversation on a Saturday. And so isn't it amazing that in this vast universe, you're in Australia, I'm in San Antonio, Texas, the two of us were brought together to have this conversation that hopefully now gives you some things that you can do, gives you some power to shift your life into another place so that you can be in the sun. And then the more clarity comes and other things start to open up that haven't been open.
And I just heard an absolute that I have that I've been hiding from, which is there has always been the exact person that I need to have a conversation with or have an interaction with or have an experience with to answer any questions that I have when I make the decision that I'm ready to hear the answers. There's always the right person that turns up. And that was an absolute I created a long time ago. And it's that reminder of, the problem hasn't been that the answers haven't been there. The problem's been that I haven't been willing to put myself in a position to hear them because I keep myself in my trauma. I've been keeping myself in the grief. I've been keeping myself in the hurt and the pain.
Give yourself a little more grace than that, first of all, because that's coming from survival brain, just the way you phrase that. Right? Just the way you phrase it. It's like, I'm doing it to my, no, the survival mechanism did it.
Is doing
survival mode mechanism did it. You weren't like, oh, I'm going to keep myself in. So it wasn't a conscious choice.
I'm going to keep myself in hell.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a conscious choice, right? So we don't need to now let the survival brain go into shame and guilt that's going to allow it to have control again. We don't even have to have that there. You didn't do it to yourself. You weren't blocking yourself. The survival mechanism in the monkey mind is what did it.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So you already have a great absolute that has helped you thus far and kept you on that path. And obviously, if the right person always comes along, and let me just say, like, well, sure, I facilitated where you're at right now and some of these little insights that you're having and rememberings that you're having. The answer came from you as far as what the solution is. You put your daughter in a bubble. The answer was already in you. You just needed someone to help you see what that answer that was already there was so that you can now go and apply it. So how's that feel?
Yeah, good. And I heard that it's okay that somebody else was able to see that answer and share it with me. Because there is that pattern, and I'm aware of the time. There is that pattern of always thinking, especially when you're raised by a single parent, always thinking that you have to do everything on your own. You have to have the answers on your own. You have to earn the income on your own. You have to, all the solutions have to come from yourself. Everything becomes, I have to do this on my own. And that's a real undercurrent story that I've had for such a long time. And so I'm just taking a minute to remind myself and saying on the inside, it's actually okay that answers come from someone else, or answers are mirrored back to me from someone else. I don't have to figure it out all myself. It's actually okay. I'm okay if somebody else gives me an answer.
Yeah. And you don't have to accept all the answers you get either. That's the beauty of life.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you take all of what we just talked about today and shift yourself into that bubble, but also consistently use those little tools, and then create your absolutes and just see what happens? Be open to see what shifts.
Absolutely. My plan this week is to take the tools that you've given me and to actually spend just moments. I'm not going to sit here and go, I'm going to do it 50 times this week. It's going to be, no, I'm going to take moments this week to actually sit and do one tool, sit and do one focus on my breathing and the temperature going in and out, or do it on the toilet. I have to do things when I'm doing something else, or if I'm sitting on the toilet, I'll do something, or if I'm washing the dishes. What a great time to focus on my breathing and temperature going in and out when I'm washing the dishes, because these are times when my mind is going really crazy. So I use those times. When I'm driving in the car, what a great time to feel my toes on the accelerator, because I usually drive in bare feet. So what a great time to feel my toes on the accelerator and focus on that. And so to help calm, those moments when I know my brain goes crazy because I'm doing something that is unconscious.
Yeah, and right afterwards is where you go, where can I get that spin of negative thinking? Get it, not necessarily on the other end of the pendulum, just halfway.
Yeah.
Halfway there.
Yeah.
And see what happens. Because as you keep doing that, you literally are just retraining the focus, and you're taking the survival mode out of being in control. And then your higher self, your conscious mind, can come in and start to shift and change. And the more times we feel like we are in control, right? We're not at the mercy of these random thoughts that are coming through, or these negative loops of thoughts coming through.
Mm-hmm.
The more we see the possibilities, the more you're at that place where you're at the peak after you've climbed that big mountain. I was like, oh, wow, look at this view. Right? It was always there. But when you're ascending the mountain, you don't know it's there until you get to a place where you can see it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so thankful for this conversation, and I would love to keep talking, but I am aware of the time.
That was fun. That was great.
Can you please share where people can find you?
So you can go to my website, bernadettegold.com.
Awesome.
On Facebook, I am at The Gold Factor. And I also have a podcast called The Gold Factor. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And I will put all the links in the description below too.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, follow up with me in a week or so and tell me how you're doing. I'm very curious. I want to see how you're feeling. I have high hopes. High hopes that you are closer to that light, and not just closer, but able to have those moments, even if they're 1 minute, where you're like, wow, I'm not in the fog. Because you start to string those together, and pretty soon the fog's just gone.
I'm definitely closer now than I was before I got on the call with you.
Cool. Perfect. Yay.
Okay. How amazing. I think amazing was that conversation with Bernadette. I didn't know where this was going to go, because I put the call out to people who are willing to come and help me coach me through the depression, through the lack of action, through the lack of motivation, through the fog. Like, the fog is so dense. It's all around me right now. And I did not know where it was going to go. And I did not know if it was going to work. And I did not know if it would kind of work, because usually coaches work with people long term, and so they work through their issues. But Bernadette, man, she showed up. She heard the task and she went for it, and I'm so thankful. As I'm sitting here, I really it's hard to put into words because it's a feeling. I have taken on board this very different feeling after having this conversation with Bernadette. I have taken on this, something has shifted. Something has shifted in me. I think it was thinking that I had to hold on to the past, hold on to the grief, hold on to the stories, and for whatever reason there was this belief inside of me, which is exactly why I wanted to do this podcast this year, is because last year I had a very narrow perspective that kept me in the mud. And when I went through having all the conversations, my perspective opened up and I was able to get out of the mud. And this is kind of what I'm doing again, I guess, is now I'm out of the mud, but now I'm in the fog. And realizing that my aim or my goal or my why is not money or a car or a house or a partner or any of these tangible physical things, because none of that really means anything to me. I think my why is the sun. My why is doing the things that I here to do because I want to reach the sunshine. I want a life in the sunshine. I'm tired of being in the fog. I was tired of being in the mud. I was tired of being in the rain. I was tired of constantly having a storm over my head. And it's been that way for such a long time. And I'm sitting here, as I was talking to Bernadette, really realizing I want to feel what life feels like in the sunshine. I want to feel like what it feels like to actually have light coming into my physical body, so it's not so dark all the time. And that is the biggest takeaway that I got from Bernadette. So when people say, what's your why? My why is my sunshine. I want to feel what life feels like living in the sun. And metaphor sun, obviously. I'm looking outside the window and there's blue sky. So obviously I have sunshine. It's a metaphorical sun, not a literal sun. Just for anyone that wants to pull my words apart. Yeah, I want to feel up what life feels like living in the sun. I am tired of being under a storm. I was born into a storm. My dad had an affair while my mom was pregnant with me, and my mom found out just before I was born. And my dad moved out while mom was in the hospital having me. So I was born into a storm. I was born into grief and loss and pain and hurt and anger and resentment and confusion and hate and all of those fabulous things. I was born into that. So I don't even know if I know what life looks like from the sun because I've never seen it before. So this is the journey that you are on with me. If you stick with me through these podcasts week after week where I'm getting coached, it is to find this freaking sunshine. I'm tired of being in the storm. I want some sun. Yeah, and that's what I got from Bernadette. And I feel like that was the biggest gift. I mean, obviously, there's so much more that I got from her, but I will be here for an hour if I talk about everything that I got from her. Let's take my earphones out. So, yeah, that is the biggest thing. That was the biggest gift for me, was that. That is such a huge gift. So, if you want to find Bernadette, make sure you go to the description below. All of her links are going to be in there. What a gift. Such an amazing woman. If you want to follow along, I'll also put the link in the description below of that meditation. I will take that snippet and it will be a separate video. So if you do actually want, or separate audio if you're listening to this on Spotify, if you want to listen to that, then there will be a separate link so you can go direct to that and listen to it, because I know for sure I'm going to be doing that this week. And if you are following along, I'm going to be doing different videos throughout the week about how I'm going on this journey, how I am taking what Bernadette shared, and am I actually doing it? Because up until now, I've really struggled with taking action. So am I actually doing the thing. That is something else that we're going to be going on a journey about. But yes, my plan is to do that little snippet every day. That's my goal this week, is to do it every day. So let's see if I do it, because my pattern is to not do it. So let's see if I can make the sun, my desire for the sun, big enough that I actually start taking the actions. And if I don't, that is going to be coming up on next week's call for sure. Why did I not take action this week? And if I do, then that's going to come on the call of talking about the fact that I have actually shifted. So let's see what happens this week. Yeah, keep following along. There are going to be different videos throughout the week that I will share. Hopefully, maybe. Can't guarantee it, because I am still me. So thank you very much for watching and listening. And I will see you on next week's call. Mwah.